by the Minister of Public Works, Lieutenant Colonel the Honorable David Birch, JP, MP, and the Minister of Tourism and Transport, the Honorable Zane De Silva, JP, MP. I'd also like to acknowledge the following who are here with us this evening: the President of the Senate, Senator the Honorable Joan Dillis Wright, JP, other members of Parliament and senators who are also here. I'm pleased to acknowledge the Mayor of Hamilton, the Right Worshipful Charles Gosling, and members of his council. My name is Adoranka Batamosi Wilson, and I'm your moderator. Now, part of our technical challenge was the sound for the video. So we're going to make it as loud as possible. If it just really doesn't work, we'll try and find another solution. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch a video first, and then I'll invite Minister Roban to say a few words with a PowerPoint presentation. So we're going to go to the video first. And just to let you know, CITV, Burn News, streaming live this evening, and Bermuda Broadcasting is also recording.
Bermuda is a beautiful place to live and work. Of that, there can be no question. With our pristine beaches, unique architecture, and vibrant culture, there's no other place like us in the world. But what if we could be more? What if our capital city could be more? What if our waterfront could be more? When we look at other cities around the world with rejuvenated waterfronts, it opens our eyes to what could be. Cape Town, Toronto, Darwin, Singapore, Cardiff. The joy of waterfronts is the joy of water. Healing, soothing, rejuvenating. The successful waterfronts are ones that work for tourists and residents alike, creating a vibrant oasis for culture, festivals, shopping, dining, and just chilling out. This government has a vision for Hamilton's waterfront and a vision for the city of Hamilton itself. That vision is a smart city infrastructure with a thriving residential center and entertainment hub. In order to achieve this vision, the following needs must be met: the development of a multifaceted waterfront, increased city living, increased use of vacant office space, effective traffic management using smart city technology, and encouraging the development of districts within the city, such as financial, entertainment, and restaurant districts. Turning eastward, we have the whimsical town of St. George, a treasured World Heritage Site and a historical gem. Unlike its business-focused counterparts, the town of St. George is largely residential. But both the city of Hamilton and the town of St. George play a crucial role in the economic health and wealth of Bermuda. For the town of St. George, government envisions a mega yacht port and marina with enhanced infrastructure, amenities, and activities. In order to achieve this vision, the following needs must be met: a sustainable management plan for the World Heritage Site with the appropriate legislation and funding that will give the municipality the ability to effectively implement any recommendations that are identified. A sustainable year-round industry, infrastructure and amenities to address the needs of the community, including its businesses, and general necessary infrastructure upgrades. Both Hamilton and St. George must be rejuvenated, vibrant entities in order to attract more visitors and greater investment opportunities for our island and its people. At present, both entities have crumbling infrastructure and empty buildings that do not reflect a thriving city and town that is attractive to both visitors and investors. Evidence suggests that neither corporation has the financial and other means to achieve and sustain the vision to rejuvenate the cities. It is also evident that the central government has a greater access to the resources and expertise needed to achieve the vision. This government believes that the two levels of government can no longer operate in economic or decision-making silos. This is why making municipal reform is a priority. This is why we made ensuring the growth and development of the municipalities a 2018 Throne Speech initiative. Throughout 2018, there were several meetings held between the government and various stakeholder groups seeking feedback on the future of Bermuda's municipalities. There was also a public survey which was carried out in September 2018, as well as the town hall meetings in the spring and summer of 2018. Following this public consultation, a policy document was created for the consideration by you, the public. The document, which was posted on the Government of Bermuda Citizens Forum in February, invited the public to comment on two options which the government was considering as they move forward with reforming the municipalities. Those two options were: 1. Change both corporations to Quangos, leaving each organization intact as a corporate body, but increasing the government's oversight over key initiatives. 2. Dissolving the corporation, repealing the Municipalities Act, and integrating the corporation's various functions into the government's administrative structure. As a result of the public feedback, the government has decided to proceed with the first option: change both corporations to Quangos. This government believes that this will help us reach our vision for the two municipalities.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you were able to hear that sufficiently. And now, before as Minister Robin comes to the front, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Minister for National Security, the Honorable Wayne Keynes, JP, MP, and the Minister of Finance, Honorable Curtis Dickinson, JP, MP.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to, before I get started, acknowledge the presence of other members of the legislature. The Finance Minister and Minister of National Security have already been acknowledged, but we also have members of the Senate here as well, Minister Simmons and Senator Simmons and Senator Jardine as well, along with the President. I'd like to acknowledge their presence as well. Let me just get started by first of all saying I'm really pleased that you all are here tonight. It was important that we have this opportunity to have a discussion and have some dialogue about what the government has outlined and the government is interested in doing. I know that many of you have many questions and comments about what is planned, and this is an opportunity for us to have that conversation. And I understand that there's a sense of uncertainty amongst many of you regarding the bill that was tabled last week by the government to repeal the elections and also to change the corporations of Hamilton and St. George into Quangos. Let me just assure you, we believe this will be good for Hamilton. And let me just share with you some of the reasons why we believe it will be good for Hamilton and what the bill means for the city. It will mean enhanced services like smart city technology deployed throughout the city of Hamilton, from North Hamilton, Uptown, to Front Street, to East Hamilton, to West Hamilton. It will mean improved infrastructure for the city. It will mean increased quality city living. It will mean, finally, the development of the waterfront. But let me also tell you what it's not going to mean. There is not going to be any loss of jobs among those who work for the Corporation of Hamilton. It will not mean the government dismantling the current and existing operational structure of Hamilton and doing away with the mayors and the councilors. There will be still a mayor, and there still will be councilors. It does not mean an asset grab. One of the interesting phrases that's been bandied around the country over the last 2 weeks, that this is an asset grab. This is not an asset grab because the municipality will remain a body corporate as it is now. Put simply, the government intends to give more support to Hamilton. That is the plan. In fact, that work has already begun. For example, the new sewage project that is being undertaken by the Ministry of Public Works will replace the work currently been planned by the Corporation of Hamilton and reduce the proposed capital outlay by $8.5 million over the next 3 years for the Corporation of Hamilton in particular. For investors, to be confident in investing in Bermuda, they must view the municipalities as entities worth their investment. As stated in our consultation document, the corporations remain the lifeblood of Bermuda. And they are also a reflection of our social and economic health. The city of Hamilton is envisioned to become a smart city with smart city infrastructure, with a thriving residential center, entertainment hub, with different districts that touch every aspect of city life and will include also a tourism interface. These are some of the plans that we envision for Hamilton. And as you would have just seen in the video, we have a vision that we want to achieve. And this is how we believe this will be met. It will be met by developing a multifaceted waterfront. Right now, the waterfront is not being used for any more than just cargo. There's more that can be done with the waterfront. It can be multifaceted in its use. Increase city living. There's more that can be done to enhance city living, attract people back to the city as an option to live. Increasing the use of office space. Encouraging the development of different districts, such as financial, entertainment, restaurant districts. These are the sort of plans we envision for Hamilton. There's a need for more effective traffic management, which I think most of us would understand. And smart city technology can contribute to that. It is important that members of the public understand the significance of the smart city concept. There are cities worldwide, Barcelona, Singapore, London, San Francisco, and Oslo, are turning to using technology to search for fresh solutions to improve city transport, waste management, energy usage, and a host of other infrastructure issues that underpin city living and urban living, and a healthy city lifestyle. Now let me stress, none of this has been done in a silo or in isolation. This vision hasn't been put together without us considering a lot of different issues. And throughout 2018, last year, there were many meetings between the government and its stakeholders. There was also surveys done. It was carried out in September of last year, and there were public meetings carried out in May and August of last year. And in 2018, the public consultation that was done, the government committed that a policy document would be drafted, and it was stated, I quote, "Be available for review and comment by the general public prior to the government making a decision on the optimal governance model for the municipalities in Bermuda." That policy document was created for public feedback and was posted on the government website on the Citizens Forum February of this year. We acknowledge that there have been many positive achievements of both corporations, and the City of Hamilton, of course, which is what we're discussing tonight. But it's very important that all of the municipalities serve the need of their stakeholders. That's important. They don't exist just for business. They must exist for the residents and for the citizens of the country, because that is who they serve, particularly Hamilton. Hamilton is the commercial center of the island. Just about everyone who works and lives comes through Hamilton, uses the facilities of Hamilton, and uses Hamilton in some way. And that's important to remember. It must serve the needs of all of its stakeholders. And also there are people who live in Hamilton. And we have come to understand through the work we've done on this project is that two levels of government, both municipal and national, can no longer operate in economic and decision-making silos. That is not fit for the 21st century. The model upon which the municipalities operate is a 17th, 18th, 19th, and early 20th century model. It must be shaped for the future. Let me just share some final comments with everyone. My family owns property in Hamilton. So I spent my early life living in Hamilton. I remember Hamilton that had street markets, that had a lot more people living in it. That's the Hamilton I remember. But I also know that we cannot hold on to the past. What can Hamilton be for the future? It can be a city that ensures proper fire safety for all of those who live and work and have business interests in it. It's a city that takes care of the people in uptown North Hamilton as much as it cares for the people on Front Street. It's a city that is vital, that is accessible to not only those who must come to it every day, but those who have the opportunity to visit our island. It needs to ensure that all those who also work out on what is called Reinsurance Row feel the same pride and feel the same dedication to their needs as those who are on Court Street, Victoria Street, Angle Street, and they all feel that the city is working for them. That is what Bermuda needs. That is the type of city that this government is desiring to shape. That is the vision, and just a part of the vision that we desire for Hamilton and for the municipality. With that, I'd just like to say thank you for all you being here. Those are my comments, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of the Premier, the Honorable David Burt, JPMP. Good evening, sir. And given the number of people that we have here tonight, and I will assume that many of you will want to talk, we have two microphones that are set up on either side of the room, one on this side and one on that side. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to come to the microphone if you wish to talk. I'll take them alternatively, one from that side and one from this side. You have 2 minutes to speak. Because we have so many people here, I'll ask you to limit your comments and or questions to 2 minutes, and ask you to just speak once so that as many people can be heard as possible. If you have a question but don't want to come to the microphone, I have several colleagues here with me today. If they'll just raise their hands, they have cards and pens with them. So ask them for a card and a pen and write your question. My only comment on that, please print, because I have to read your question. So print to make it easier for me. Speak without being offensive, listen without being defensive. We don't have to agree. We're here to hear each other's comments, to ask questions and get answers. And also accept the speaker's comments. Like I said, we don't have to agree. And if there are topics that come up today that are outside of the realm of our discussion, my colleagues will make notes of them, and we'll look at how we'll address those issues at a later date outside of this forum. So if you'd like to come to the mic, we can get started. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, good presentation, I think. I'm just looking at the Q&A sheet that you guys. Oh, raise the mic. All right, awesome. So I'll ask an obvious question that just comes to mind looking at this, and given that we've had a lot of conversations in this country as it concerns taxation and cost, it's a pretty obvious one in my opinion. You say in the sheet that the municipalities don't really have the means to take on the financial obligations. What gives you the basis to think the government has the financial basis to take on these obligations?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. One thing that is clear is that both Hamilton and St. George's are different. So we're talking about Hamilton in specifically, but when it comes to the ability for Hamilton to invest beyond its daily operations, St. George's. St. George's does not have the means to do much of the investment is required outside of its regular daily operations. Hamilton certainly has shown the ability to do certain related investments that it does from its own taxation revenue. But in our own discussions with Hamilton, there have been issues that we have desired to on which it has told this government it doesn't have the money to do so, such as the investment in smart cities in the way that the government would like to see it. We have been told that they do not have the money to do so. And these are part of the visions that we would like to see facilitated as a government, not only for Hamilton, but also for the country. What Hamilton has tax base is certainly financially healthy to deal with its regular operations by and large.
Thank you, Minister.
Mr. Premier, members of Parliament, and distinguished guests, I got to tell you, I'm here to say I totally agree. I totally agree with their vision. I totally agree with that. We'd all like to see the things they envision. Who wants to see all that happen? Yeah, see, we're all in the same boat. But I do have some questions after reading both the bill and the ministerial statement. Thank you, I don't need that. I do have a few questions, though. That the government will improve economic well-being. The government will improve social well-being. The government will improve the environmental well-being of the city. I would say right now the corporation is doing their best to do that. When I go and pick up Debbie's little dog, that street's all been paved and brick. It's the nicest street in town. The city, I would say, does have the money, but this government, ladies and gentlemen, unless I'm on another planet, is broke and has no money. Let's develop the waterfront. I'd love to see that, but how? We're going to increase city living. Mr. Lopes and John Swan are doing their best to increase city living. And the other one that the vacant offices. I've got a vacant office. If you could help me rent that, I'd really be pleased to do it. I don't think rental stuff is what the government should be doing. Those all sound like magic to me.
30 seconds.
The derelict buildings are owned by people, and it often reflects the industry and the time we're in. I'm afraid Blocks will be next. I'll have to cut short because I could go on a long time, but I guess in closing, with the enormous problems that we face today, both socially and economically, why on earth would the government get involved in two municipalities that run quite well, and they have changed over time? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Butterfield, for your comments, and I'm happy to give you some answers to the issues that you've raised. When it comes to issues of environmental, and we're discussing Hamilton for the time being, I don't think I can share your view when we know that Hamilton is currently pumping sewage out off the South Shore through the current water sewage system that it's had. And if Hamilton was so run so well, they could have invested in something very different a long time ago to avoid that. Secondly, the government is currently making such investments for the whole country. It makes sense to include Hamilton in the wider plans for our full 22 square miles, rather than carving out 1 square mile to be different from everybody else, when the government has a solution that can impact every citizen on this island and make us an environmentally friendly island than we are now. It is no longer acceptable to be pumping waste off the South Shore or into Tobacco Bay. Those have been the responsibilities of both corporations all these years, and they haven't been able to deal with that in a way that would make us environmentally friendly in the management of our waste. There was also the question of fire safety in the city of Hamilton. I've had these discussions with a number of people recently. There are fire hydrants all over Hamilton, North Hamilton, all over the place. They are very attractive. They're nice and red and pretty, but none of them work. The water system of Hamilton has been dilapidated and broken down for decades. Now, those of you who own buildings in Hamilton have often developed your buildings. You're paying more rates to the corporation for services, including safety, fire safety. But you're not getting anything because that system doesn't work. There's a reason that building on Front Street that was owned by a former member of Parliament burnt down, and the fire service couldn't hook up to a fire hydrant to put it out, because there's no water system to deal with the safety of our buildings and our structures within the city of Hamilton, the responsibility of the Corporation of Hamilton. So I ask you, those are some of the issues. The failure to develop the waterfront. Over many years, there have been many plans under the stewardship of the Corporation of Hamilton to develop the waterfront. They were the leaders in that development. They haven't been able to do it. I won't get into any details about a hotel that seemingly over decades the Hamilton Corporation has failed to be able to develop. That would have helped the country, a country starving for hotel development. These are just some of the things, everyone, that is in the stewardship of the corporation. The government knows something about developing hotels. The government knows something about developing waterfronts that aid the strategic interests of the country. We want to partner with Hamilton and those who are interested to make these things happen. And we will partner with the Corporation of Hamilton in this new model to facilitate these opportunities for our country. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Minister. Any other questions from the floor?
He only has 2 minutes.
Assume this is on? Good.
Yeah.
Sorry that there have been some accusations thrown our way. It was not my intention to speak tonight, but to allow the people, for once, to be heard.
He has a speech written, so he
intended to speak. The government would actually listen. In terms of the fire hydrants, 1982, there was a transfer of the fire services from the city to national government. There was a Fire Services Act, and if I'd like to quote from it, Section 19 says, on the 1st of April 1983, any engine, equipment, vehicle, and other movable property and assets belonging to the Corporation of Hamilton and used by that corporation in connection with its fire services shall be transferred to and shall vest in the government. All the other points have similar responses, which I won't bother going into right now. I will allow the people to speak, and I think they speak on my behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Organize a proper
We'll take other questions from the floor. Minister?
Do you actually want to have a question?
Do you want to respond?
Well, I'll respond, sure. From 1998, what was done? The other question we have to ask is, was under government's control enough from 1982? Don't you think a responsible corporation would say, listen, they're not working, let's get them fixed?
Thank you, Minister. Sir?
Good evening. My family has, since my grandfather's days, we had property in the city of Hamilton, maybe close to 100 years, about 100 years. I'm very pleased to hear what government wants to do as far as the city is concerned. We have noticed that I've been to several of these meetings over the years, and nothing has ever happened as far as the back of town is concerned, or uptown, or whatever you want to say. We're going as far as we could go in the water down Front Street. But I'm glad to hear that the government is going to be willing to do something as far as the city is concerned. Not only certain sections of the city, but try to develop and help the whole city. And there's another thing is that we also find out that parts of the city have rent control. I don't know how that came about, but you have buildings in Hamilton that is built as properties for businesses or residents. I don't think it's only certain areas of the city that has rent control and has problems like that. Why is it the city is so separated and so different, and we're all supposed to be part of this whole picture here? So I'm looking forward to government to get involved and help to develop the back of town, because you see all kinds of pavements and asphalts and sidewalks and everything happening on the other side of the city, but on the back side of the city, nothing's going on. So it's time for something to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Thank you for letting me speak. Minister, I have I suppose, a political science question. I have a question which is in two parts. The first is whether any consideration was given to reforming the Municipalities Act while retaining a system of elections, which arguably could be broader than the current one. And secondly, if the Minister could explain how under the Quango system that's being proposed, that the appointed boards will be more accountable than an elected body. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Yes, all those. Just to inform the public, there have been numerous studies done of our municipalities over the years. So even though this formal process started under this government in 2018, we had the benefit of numerous studies and looking at how the municipalities could be run in a different way to achieve some of the goals that we felt were important to it. So we did look at that. But in our view that a Quango model would be a more efficient model to achieve a vision that can be reached for the needs that we feel face both municipalities, but specifically Hamilton. We're talking about Hamilton tonight, but that would face the municipalities as we go forward. As it relates to your second question, one of the things we believe that we can achieve through the type of model of Quango that we're proposing, and I think it must be also understood that Quangos, there may be a Google or Oxford definition of a Quango, but Quangos to meet the needs of the interests upon which they have been tapped. There are some Quangos which can be funded by a public body to carry out certain responsibilities. There are Quangos that can be funding, like some of the ones in Bermuda that are self-funding. There are some that specifically have grants that are given to them to carry out certain objectives. Hamilton are different. So there will be a different funding model in relation to St. George's. Obviously, for St. George, for Hamilton. And we feel that it's only through the type of as we put in the Act. It allows us to make sure that the right people are there on the respective Quangos to carry out, but also bring certain expertise to facilitate the needs and the interests of the respective Quangos. So yes, there's people, but there's a process also in the Act which allows for local representation and persons to come from the respective communities who the people feel can best suit. People can nominate themselves or other people can nominate them. So we believe that by having a system that allows for the public will to be represented on the respective Quangos, but at the same time, make sure that the people who are on the boards, on the respective Quangos, that have expertise that can aid and facilitate in partnership with the government the interests and the vision for both, that will work. And let me address something as well, which I think many people are thinking, okay, the minister will pick all these political people of his choice. The desire here is to bring about organizations that will bring about results. Results for the people of Bermuda and for the respective bodies that they have the responsibility for overseeing. So that's what, at least as a minister, I'll be looking for. People who have the requisite skills that can aid in reaching the vision and the needs of both respective bodies. That is the goal.
May I? I'm going to step out on a limb and speak on an area that doesn't fall under my responsibility. But as a member of the Cabinet with collective responsibility, I'm pleased that the Minister of Finance is here and he'll correct me if I go astray. I'd like to dispel the myth that we don't have no money. I'd like to dispel the myth that we don't have any money. We have debt. And I would venture to say that everybody in this room has debt. I would venture to say that many people in this room will go to heaven or hell with outstanding debt. It's how you manage it. And there does not seem to be a recognition or an acknowledgement of the fact that for the first time in 17 years, the Minister of Finance, one, has balanced the budget, two, has allocated funds to pay down that debt. Window dressing? Okay, then let's really be honest tonight. I suspect that most of the objection to this proposal comes from the sense of entitlement that many people feel they have in this country. And the comment of window dressing has to do very much with the fact of who is delivering the message. This government was elected with 51% of the electorate of this country, and like it or not, that means we have a mandate to govern and to bring change to this country. And the fact that for 200 years or however long this city has been run by the oligarchy, let's be crystal clear, and you want to keep it the same way, well, the fat lady's singing that song. And it is time for change. And we're not doing it to penalize anyone in this country. Think about it. Forget that it's me talking, because I know where you go. This country is 21 square miles. Anywhere else in the world, you would not be having the replication and duplication of effort and resources of the country all across the country and operating in silos. You wouldn't have it. Why would you have, and I'll speak now, I'll go back in my lane, Minister of Finance, I'll speak now in relation to the responsibility that I currently hold. Why would you have a sewage treatment plant in Dockyard that could cater to the whole island, a sewage treatment plant in Southside that could cater to the whole island, no sewage treatment plant in the city of Hamilton, and you pump, you know what, live off of South Shore? Why would you do that? And the fact that you want to transition to saving money for all of us is being rejected because of who the messenger is. The Corporation of Hamilton currently have in their budget $8-point-something million to put in a new pumping station on Front Street. Why would you do that? There are probably more people in this room that are concerned about the environment than I. Maybe one or two. That is environmentally madness. And we have the ability and the plan to address the sewage for the entire country at a cheaper cost than having 3 entities trying to do that. But it's rejected because of who the messenger is. And what we are saying to you all is that we have to change. And you have a say in affecting that change. The fact that you don't like this idea, then instead of saying no, because I believe that in many instances we are the country of no, we say no and then we ask, what's the question? If we are actually going to dig ourselves out of the hole that we're in and we acknowledge that, and we accept and believe what oftentimes we say, that we are all in this boat together, then that means that there isn't one segment of this community that has the exclusivity on good ideas. Oh, really? There it is, lady. Okay. There it is. Thank you.
Minister, what I will ask of the audience, if you want to make a statement, please come to the microphone and make a statement. It won't be appropriate for us to call out from the audience because we won't be able to hear everybody's comments. So if you want to make a comment, come to the microphone. If you don't want to come to the microphone, write your comment on a card. My colleagues are on either side of the room with cards, and they will come to me. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. Sir?
Good evening. My name is Carlton Johnson. I am the chairman of the Residents Committee for the Corporation of Hamilton. The building right behind me over here, right next to this building, in 2011, I borrowed $500,000 to upgrade it. So there are people in the city that look like me that are doing things to upgrade where they live. I take offense to anyone in North Hamilton who I have never seen at a meeting, who have the opportunity to come to the meeting and speak on any matter that they may have where they live. In fact, I've just come from a Residents Committee meeting. And that meeting is available the first Thursday of every month. But on another matter, these sewage plants water treatment plants that you spoke about, they're at the opposite ends of the island. And if the people in Hamilton have to have their sewage taken to those areas, that means you're going to have to dig up the whole island for our sewage to get to either end, whichever one you want to pick. So that's going to be a cost factor. So I'm just saying, with everything that needs to be done, there has to be collaboration, like you said, there has to be a vision, and there has to be working together and not pulling people down.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your comment. Just so that the public knows, those regular meetings where the public can interact with the councilors will continue, and perhaps there'll be more. So that process, as it stands, will continue under the new model that we deploy. And we are happy to work with anyone who has an interest in seeing parts of the city improve, to address issues such as Mr. Johnson described, and we look forward to there being greater accessibility to the corporation. if and when these changes are deployed.
Thank you, Minister. I have some questions from the floor. The question of funding was not answered. Will the government increase city taxes?
The answer is no, because we will not be controlling city taxes. The management of the taxation that is currently a part of the City of Hamilton will stay with the body corporate, which will be the corporation. However the process happens now for approving taxes will remain, but there is no plan for us to increase taxes, and that is not a subject of the bill that we tabled on Friday.
Thank you, Minister. Next question. The Hamilton docks cannot be moved as the roads to each end of the island are too congested, the causeway and the bridge. What are the plans for the docks?
As I stated in my statement, it's for the development of a multifaceted waterfront. That doesn't necessarily mean, and there's been no discussions about us about moving the docks. That's not a topic, certainly, of the bill or any discussions that we've had with anyone thus far.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll remind you there are mics at the front, so go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my name is Rod Ferguson, and I have questions. Nobody answered Jim Butterfield's question about how you were going to deal with vacant office space. I'd be curious to hear that. And the other question I have is your idea of developing districts. To what benefit will be aggregating entertainment and finance and restaurants in groups? I can't see why that would help anybody.
Thank you. Minister?
Certainly, the management of property in Hamilton will remain the interest of the property owners. But certainly, like in many cities, the city administration, if it desires to develop certain areas in a certain way, it can create incentives to attract restaurants. We have an area now where most of our reinsurance companies are, and that is almost now a district on its own, the west of Hamilton and the west of Front Street. Well, there may be other areas, as we have a North Hamilton Economic Empowerment Zone, that can be tailored to attract certain types of business if there's a desire. And our vision is that we enhance the restaurant experience. We enhance the different experiences in Hamilton. Perhaps it can aid in some of the management of space and better use of certain space that's already here. These are the things that can be shaped within the new Quango, tailoring to the needs of the city. So I believe that that is how we can shape things going forward. The government would like to be able to move in this direction. We believe that, like with other cities in the world, having certain areas where you have enhanced activity, where that's a focus of activity, will certainly be complementary to the life and the vitality of those areas.
Thank you, Minister. Any other questions from the floor?
Rents are a matter for those who own the properties. We aren't proposing to do anything about rents, sir.
You're going to increase the use of vacant office space. I don't know how.
That could be part of a business development plan where the Quango can have a agency or a committee that focuses on attracting business into the city where there's a necessity to attract business. That has nothing to do with rents. That means working in partnership with those who are in the city with attracting residents, or certainly Dockyard is one area where that has happened. Dockyard 40 years ago was a different place than it is now, and there's been a Quango there under different governments carrying out responsibilities, and it has led to an area which is now prized and valued by all Bermudians. And there have been many Bermudians of different skill sets, different expertise on that particular Quango that has aided in that development. And Hamilton's Quango will be tailored to deal with the same interests in the same way, to aid in the vitality and rejuvenation and modernization of the city.
May I? I don't think you'll find that anybody at this table will disagree with you about the inefficiency of governments. But what I will say to you is that within the Ministry of Public Works, we have 3 Quangos, and we've started down the road of amalgamating 2 of them. And we are about 6 months into that process, and I can tell you that that's probably one of the more pleasant tasks of me as a minister, because they actually operate a lot more efficiently than the bureaucracy that forms part of the government. And you will see, and we are seeing already, efficiencies and forward movement at a faster pace than you get in government in both the Bermuda Housing Corporation and BLDC. And that will only accelerate, because what you have now is the same CEO and the same CFO of both of those entities. And there are going to be some further economies of scale because you have duplication of effort in both of them. One of the advantages of both those two entities as well as Wedco, a decade ago I done this job, so it's like returning to I don't know what. But one of the things that those three entities did, we had originally started to head towards amalgamation, and for a variety of reasons it didn't happen. But one of the things that was able to be accomplished at that time was all three of those entities purchased the same computer system. And so the ability for them to amalgamate and not have to do what oftentimes happen in the wider government, that the systems can't talk to one another, I can tell you that they are operating very efficiently. And what we've also been able to do, each entity approached it in a different way. The BHC actually hired somebody in-house to manage the system for them from the supplier. The other two entities contracted with the supplier. What we've been able to do immediately is to eliminate one of those folk. And so the person at BHC who has been managing their system now does BLDC as well, at no additional cost to either the Quango or the Bermudian taxpayer. So Quangos can operate far more efficiently than the wider government.
Thank you, Minister. Okay, so I'll go to the cards. Government often commissions studies that contain valuable analysis on public issues, and many are never made public. The minister mentioned that this decision was made on the basis of studies on the reform of the municipalities. Would the government consider making these public?
Actually, thank you for the question. Actually, there is a study that is widely available on the government's plan to reform Quangos. It was done in 2003, and it looks at every Quango that exists under government, and it's available in the public domain. So anyone can get that study and look at it.
Thank you, Minister. Any other questions from the floor? Okay, I'll go back to the cards. There is a general feeling that the government's sole purpose is to take over, in this takeover, is to use the assets of the city to enable it to leverage more borrowing from international lenders, which will get the island deeper into debt. Is the I think that might be one statement, then there's another one. Is the government intending to take over all the financial assets of the city?
The premise of both of those are false, so I have to say no. They're just false, because in nothing that we are proposing is for takeover of any assets or takeover of any of the entities. So both of the premises are false.
Thank you, Minister. If taxes will remain the same and the mayor and councillors will remain the same, no jobs lost, other than political appointments, what real change can this structure create?
Clearly, I outlined that in my statement, is to bring about a different vision and enhance services for like both of the respective Quangos, to bring about multifaceted port for Hamilton, bring about enhanced city living, to deal with issues of infrastructure that both have been challenged on dealing with over the years, which not only aid not only the corporations but also aid the country. The structure is to make them run better. It also brings certain financial flexibility to both, that they will be able to do things financially in a more effective way with the partnership of the government, which is under the current municipal act is virtually impossible or extremely difficult to do now.
Thank you, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any other questions from the floor?
Good evening, Minister, and good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm an architect, and I've had the opportunity to work under plans for the development of Bermuda, which have enhanced spoke to many of the same goals that you have laid out in your envision. And I started out with the 74 plan, the 84 plan, the 94 plan, 2000, 2008, and now we're 2018. Many of these plans, all of these plans, have espoused the same goals. One thing I have noticed that each one of these plans, it gets more and more complex and more expensive to develop as we go along as well. How do you propose to advance development, the types that you're looking for, infrastructure, housing, districts, without a comprehensive visual plan of where you want to go with that, so that people have a sense that they can buy into it? And more importantly, and this is very important, the buying in is the critical component. We will need outside investment, I am absolutely sure, to encourage people to get involved. How will we do that? Where do you suppose that funding is going to come from for the scale of the work that you are talking about? It's not small. Can you share with us a little bit about how your envision of your financial plans also work with your physical plans in areas in Hamilton in particular? Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good question. I can advise that in the first instance, particularly for infrastructure in relation to water and sewage, the plan started with the town of St. George being the template for the island, and I suspect that most people in this room probably just didn't feel there was an interest, and naturally so, because we've done several presentations in St. George, and because it affected them, I think most of the people that attended were from that part of the island. What has evolved as a result of that, not only that exercise, but KPMG have, for the last 3 years, I believe now, been putting on infrastructure seminars. Last year it was in Bahamas. The year before that it was in Jamaica. I attended the year we went to Jamaica, taking along with me the principal water engineer in the Ministry of Works, along with the permanent secretary. And as somebody who spent most of their lives working in international business and attending conferences and being bored to tears by them in the main, this was the best conference I'd ever attended in my life. It was productive, it was short, it provided the sort of input and exposure to not just infrastructure in the region, but also funding for those types of projects. This past year, we sent the chief engineer and the principal water engineer to the same conference, and they came back with a number of ideas, and it really was the genesis for expanding the concept of St. George's infrastructure plan to the entire island. Not only because there was information provided that supported the whole exercise, but there was also various funding models that supported that as well. Certainly you do not head down this road doing this type of infrastructure improvements unless it is financially sustainable in and of itself. And our ability to be able to do that does exist. We are starting in the East for one primary reason. I guess by accident it needed the most support at the time, and so that's why they rose to the top of the pile in terms of them being the pilot program. But in addition to that was the coming online of the St. Regis Hotel in St. George. And so part of the whole concept and pilot project in St. George is to provide the support infrastructure for both that hotel from a waste management and water sewage point of view. Can I also just comment on the comment that one of the questioners asked about if we're going to pump St. George, Hamilton sewage to Southside, we're going to have to dig up the hill country. That is in fact correct. But you will know that, well, you maybe don't know, but certainly pumping sewage and water to and from St. George is a minor exercise engineering-wise. As I said, we are 21 square miles. I was recently in the city of Salem in Massachusetts, and they have a sewage treatment plant that actually, they have a population of 60,000, and they have a sewage treatment plant that caters to the whole county, which is considerably more than that. So it's something that can be managed. And technology has advanced and various other things to be able to do that. Now, I recognize, and we recognize, that that's likely to cause some considerable angst in the country. But I can also tell you that within the Ministry of Public Works, we have been having significant discussions with all of the utilities in the country, Belco in particular, who plan on trenching from, I think it's Fort Hill in Devonshire to Blue Hole Hill. So that's what? A significant portion of the area that we're talking about. And so part of the discussions are that we are going to require utilities to go in the hole at the same time, as opposed to what has traditionally happened in Bermuda, where one utility goes and digs up the road and we pave it nicely, and the next one comes along in 2 months and digs it up again. And so there is full collaboration and coordination at this stage of the game to be able to have all of the utilities, including ourselves, go into that trench at the same time. Now, will we be able to bring all of that along at the same time? Probably not. But what we will be able to do is to put the piping in place so that we do not have to come behind Belco or any other utility in digging up the road again in order to be able to provide that infrastructure to be able to support what it is that we wish to do and where it is that we're headed. What will happen next is that in the wider context of looking at the entire infrastructure for the entire country, once that research and discussions have concluded, and that should happen in the second quarter of this year, we will come probably to the city because now it is going to affect the entire island in phases and present the whole plan so that people understand where it is that we're going and the work that has been done already and how it is that we intend rolling it out and how it will also be funded.
I'd just like to make a comment with regard to Colin's question about the development of the waterfront and how are we going to do that. And he even hinted about foreign investment. And he's absolutely correct. We have St. Regis that's on the way. You have Morgan's Point that's on the way. Azure up in Warwick they've finished their first few phases and the sales have gone quite well. Aerial Sands that, you know, we're still fingers crossed that Aerial Sands will take off soon. And you have, you know, it's no secret that Southampton Princess is up for sale. And people are interested, showing interest in that. So I think that, you know, Bermuda really is on the cusp of something really sweet. Obviously, we have confidence shown by our overseas investors with regard to St. Regis and Morgan's Point and Azure. And Aerial Sands is soon to follow, we hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed. But certainly, as the government push for initiatives, new initiatives like fintech and new banks in the country, I think that the interest is going to start to swell. And let's hope so for all of our sakes.
Let me just touch on the issue of investment. I think it's all understood that inward investment is what's good for Bermuda. And even with the matters upon which we're dealing with both corporations, this is going to be crucial going forward. And having a model that they are run by that can facilitate that efficiently. That has not been most efficiently and successfully done in the recent past. Certainly over the last 10 to 15 years, the ability for Hamilton to attract the investment that they clearly have desired has not been successful for waterfront or hotel development. So those things need to find a way to be accomplished in partnership with the central government in a way that they can work. This is how we believe this can be successful under this type of model, because it has been successful in other parts of the island. But also, I'll touch on
St. George's for a minute, just for a brief minute. And one of the things we are keen and interested in making sure happens down there is investment in the marina, because it will provide an economic injection for St. George's, and it will provide them with an effort to be somewhat economically sustainable, because the type of direction we're going, which will be modeled on a development agreement similar to how it has been done with hotels successfully, that marina will happen. And we're pleased to actually say that it's actually a Bermudian that's interested in facilitating that investment. So it's not coming out, but there are Bermudians lined up, ready to continue to be involved even after all this time with the development of that marina, which will, in our view, help to attract business activity back to St. George, and also add a new activity of which St. Georgians can be involved and be trained and levy their own talents and services to benefit not only themselves, but also the country.
Thank you, Minister. I just want to do a time check. It's now 6:50. We started 10 minutes late, so we'll go to 10 after 7 if we need to. If not, we'll finish when there are no more questions before then. Minister, I have another question. The majority of insurance business is west of the city limits and developed with planning support. Will the city limits be expanded so that there is more equal participation for the benefits that are proposed?
There is no plans, and certainly the bill that we've tabled that's not a subject of the bill that we tabled. But going forward, any plans to expand the city limits will be done in partnership with the city. But there's no government plans to expand the city limits at this point, and that's certainly not a subject of the bill.
Thank you, Minister. Will the ratepayers, residential and commercial, still have a vote in the municipal area?
As we indicated, we are repealing the elections. That is what the bill will do, but there will be an opportunity for persons who live, who have residence and have businesses and work in both respective municipalities to participate in the selection of persons who will represent them on the respective quangos.
Excellent. Are there any more questions from the floor?
Okay.
Minister, do you want to say some closing remarks?
Yeah, I'm going to say thank you.
Good evening again, and I'd just like to say thank you for everybody for coming out. It was important for this dialogue to happen because this is a part of the process the government wishes to have in place, where there's openness, there's transparency on the plans that we put forth to the public, and so that you can have your say and we can listen. And what you tell us will factor into the decisions and the directions that we'll take. So I'm happy that we were able to be here tonight, but I just want to remind you of what we desire for Hamilton. We would like to see a multifaceted waterfront. We want to see increased city living. We want to see the vacant office space occupied and paying rents and paying the appropriate fees to the corporation as it happens now. We want to encourage development of districts. We want to see the North Hamilton empowered. We want to see a vibrancy in other areas of the city that will complement business activity, social activity, and the activity that all Bermudians deserve to have in our capital. And that is a vision. That's a part of the vision we want to shape with you going forward. So we are starting this journey, and I can assure you that there will be more opportunities just like this to talk about the road going forward. And I hope that you all are prepared to come and sit and talk just as we've done today. So I wish again to thank you for being here. I wish you all to get home safely, and we can continue to dialogue on this journey and this process together. Thank you.